Silence is not the absence of voice. It is the presence that dominates space without needing to compete for it. While the common man tries to fill the void with words, the strategist uses it as territory. In the world of power, the one who speaks less always observes more, and the one who observes more commands without needing permission. Since ancient times, silence has been the language of those who understand the game. Machiavelli knew that words are the easiest way to be betrayed, because everything spoken can be used against you. A look, a gesture, or a pause, on the other hand, are indecipherable codes. They communicate intention, but never expose weakness. Silence creates discomfort. It strips bare those who live by reaction, those who cannot stand the void, those who need to be heard to feel alive. When you remain quiet in the face of provocation, the other begins to fight his own mind. He imagines, interprets, tortures himself. Silence forces him to reveal what he tries to hide: fear, anxiety, insecurity. The man who speaks less is not only more enigmatic, he is more dangerous. No one can predict what he thinks or measure the reach of his patience. The absence of response is an invisible trap, and in that trap, the impatient surrender. They talk too much, explain too much, reveal too much. Silence is the rope with which the reckless hang themselves. Machiavelli taught that whoever controls perception controls power. Silence is the supreme tool of that control. It turns you into a mirror. Each person projects onto you what they fear or desire. To some, you seem cold. To others, wise. To everyone, you are unpredictable. And unpredictability is the first step toward authority. There is power in not reacting. There is mastery in not responding. Silence does not seek approval. It imposes presence. It is the boundary between the ordinary man and the one who has learned to master his own inner fire. Because silence is not peace, it is contained strength. It is anger tamed, impulse controlled, the word that chooses not to be born. Modern society confuses expression with power, but the more a man speaks, the more he empties himself. The one who says everything he feels gives away the map of his weaknesses. Silence, on the other hand, is the invisible fortress that protects what is essential: intention, strategy, and mystery. And when everyone expects your reaction, silence becomes an attack. It disarms, disorients, and commands respect without a sound. Because in the end, the one who speaks to be heard serves. The one who remains silent and observes governs. Power does not begin with strength, but with restraint. Machiavelli understood that a man incapable of mastering his own emotions would never rule another human being. Fury, anxiety, and the need to prove something are mechanisms of exposure, not of control. True power begins when you can watch your own impulse and still choose silence. Most people confuse self-control with repression, but repression is fear, control is calculation. The repressed man swallows what he feels and implodes. The controlled man observes what he feels and decides when, where, and whether to act. That distance between feeling and reacting is the ground where power is built. Every second of pause is a strategic advantage the impulsive will never have. In moments of conflict, the one who loses temper first loses control. Anger steals precision, and emotion turns a man into a spectator of himself. That is why silence is such an effective weapon. It not only conceals intent, but reorganizes the mental field. When you stay quiet, you reposition yourself, and in that instant, the one who shouts becomes predictable. Emotional control is not artificial coldness. It is clarity. It is knowing that emotion is a tool, not an identity. When you understand that you can feel anger without being guided by it, you turn what was once weakness into ammunition. A calm gaze in the middle of provocation is worth more than 1,000 words of defense. The enemy senses he has lost control of the terrain. In the game of power, those who talk too much try to regain control through noise. The man who masters silence creates the opposite: psychological chaos in his opponent. Every second without response forces the other to expose his insecurities. He begins to guess what you think, what you feel, what you intend, and the more he imagines, the more he gives himself away. To master emotions is not to eliminate anger, but to use it as controlled fuel. The warrior who shouts reveals fear. The strategist who observes turns fear into understanding. The first acts to survive, the second acts to win. When you channel what you feel into attention and calculation, the body becomes stable, and the mind impenetrable. Calmness in moments of tension is its own language. It communicates that you own your space. The man who remains composed while others lose their balance projects a kind of superiority that cannot be fabricated. Because self-control is not appearance, it is presence. It turns chaos into a stage and you into its axis. Machiavelli would say, "The prince should be ruled neither by love nor by hatred, but by the results that both can produce." So it is with the modern man. He does not avoid emotion. He decides what purpose each one will serve. When you learn to contain the fire without extinguishing it, the world stops being a battlefield and becomes a chessboard. And on that board, the one who rules is not the strongest, but the calmest. Silence has a function that few understand. It reflects, not what you are, but what the other person tries to hide. When you do not react, the mask of those who live by appearances begins to crack. Silence forces the other to face their own emptiness, and it is in that confrontation that the truth appears. The man who needs your voice reveals his dependence on your control. Machiavelli understood that power does not need to assert itself. It only needs to exist. Silence is the purest expression of that idea. It does not ask for respect, it imposes it. The absence of words is a mirror that brings to the surface everything the other tries to disguise. The insecure become aggressive, the arrogant become nervous, the manipulative become anxious. Each projects their own imbalance onto your silence. When you remain quiet in front of someone who tries to provoke you, the game changes. The one who expected your reaction is left without a script. They lose their balance because they cannot predict your next move. Silence forces them to confront their own weakness, the need to be heard, validated, or feared. They talk more, explain more, expose more, and the more they speak, the more power shifts to you. When mastered, silence is a form of passive manipulation. It does not deceive, it exposes. The man who controls this technique does not need to threaten, correct, or compete. He simply observes. And the more he observes, the more he learns about others, their intentions, impulses, and hidden desires. Silence turns the social field into a psychological laboratory. It is easy to mistake silence for submission. The weak believe that those who stay quiet surrender. But true silence is the opposite of surrender. It is mastery of time and attention. While the other wastes energy trying to decipher what you think, you conserve strength and gain advantage. They react. You decide when to act. In human interactions, noise is an escape. People talk to avoid hearing themselves. They explain themselves to convince themselves. And the more they explain, the weaker they become. Silence dismantles this theater. It creates discomfort, and discomfort reveals intentions. Those who fear silence fear themselves. The most common reaction to silence is anxiety, because silence offers no validation. It leaves the other alone with their own ego. And the ego, when not fed, begins to implode. That is why the quiet man is seen as a threat. He offers no predictability, and unpredictability is the essence of power. Machiavelli would write that the wise prince must always conceal his intentions. Silence is the most natural way to do this. It is the veil that covers thought and the shield that protects strategy. While the fool speaks to show strength, the wise man stays silent to measure the ground. In the end, the one who masters silence not only observes the enemy, he makes him speak until he destroys himself. Machiavelli understood that power rarely belongs to the most virtuous, but to the most unpredictable. A man who reveals everything he thinks becomes readable, and what is readable can be controlled. To him, dissimulation was not deceit, it was the protection of intent. In this sense, silence is the most refined form of dissimulation. It confuses, intrigues, and preserves. In The Prince, Machiavelli states that a ruler must learn to be both fox and lion. The fox deceives the hunters, the lion intimidates the wolves. Silence is the fusion of these two symbols. It deceives through absence and intimidates through presence. It is a dual force, subtle yet dangerous. The man who masters it learns to conceal his plans without needing to justify his restraint. Machiavellian dissimulation is an art of survival. In a world where everyone competes for attention, the one who controls the flow of information holds true power. The man who speaks little but observes everything may appear distant, yet he stands at the center of the game. His lack of words turns him into an enigma, and the enigma breeds influence. People fear what they do not understand, and they obey what they fear. Silence is the perfect mask. It allows others to project their own expectations onto you. Some will see wisdom, others, coldness. Few will recognize it as strategy. Power is born from this ambiguity, being many things at once without needing to be any of them. The dissimulative man does not lie. He becomes a mirror, reflecting what the world wants to see while protecting what he truly is. In politics, in war, and in human relations, predictability is a death sentence. The prince who speaks too much loses the advantage of surprise. The man who explains himself too often loses respect. Silence preserves both weapons, mystery and authority. It is the invisible cloak that separates the strategist from the participant. Machiavelli observed that human nature is unstable. The people love today and hate tomorrow. Today's ally becomes tomorrow's traitor. That is why the wise never reveal their heart. They show fragments, enough to inspire trust, but never the whole. Dissimulation is a barrier against the volatility of the world, and silence is the cement that keeps that barrier standing. Those who seek total transparency do not understand the game. Purity becomes vulnerability when exposed in hostile territory. The wise man is not false, he is selective. He decides what to reveal, what to conceal, and when to act. This selectivity is the core of dissimulation, a form of self-defense disguised as calm. Ultimately, Machiavelli did not teach men to deceive others, but to prevent being deceived. Silence is the first line of that defense. It protects not only what you think, but also what you intend to do. And when the world demands explanations, the man who dissimulates with wisdom replies with the most unsettling answer of all: nothing. Every social confrontation is a contest for control. Most people believe that the one who speaks the loudest wins, but the opposite is true. Dominance begins when you realize that silence alters the other person's psychological field. In any interaction, a meeting, a debate, a relationship, the one who stays silent first takes invisible command. Silence forces the other to reveal themselves, and every revelation is a surrender of power. The human mind cannot endure emptiness for long. Faced with silence, it creates narratives to fill the space. This need is a predictable weakness, and the man who understands it can manipulate without saying a word. When you stay quiet in an argument, the other begins to interpret, believing that you're plotting something, despising them, or silently judging them. Driven by discomfort, they make mistakes. In professional environments, silence is often mistaken for submission, but those who truly hold authority are the ones who speak last, or not at all. The leader who observes creates tension. That tension inspires respect, even unconsciously. People feel they are being measured, and that feeling forces them to restrain themselves. The man who masters silence not only protects his own mind, but regulates the minds of others. In relationships, silence has the same effect. The one who reacts to every provocation becomes a slave to another's moods. But the man who remains silent creates doubt. Doubt erodes the control of those who try to manipulate. Suddenly, the provocateur is disarmed, trying to decipher intentions that don't exist. He invents ghosts and fights them. Once again, silence wins through the absence of effort. The psychology of power is built on perception, and silence shapes perception with surgical precision. When you don't react, the other begins to project. If you are calm, they think you're planning. If you are serious, they imagine judgment. If you are distant, they assume disdain. Each assumption makes them weaker because uncertainty is more suffocating than hostility. The silent man becomes a mirror of the environment. He does not blend into the noise, he absorbs it. While others speak, he deciphers. While they try to assert presence, he strengthens his by withholding it. Silence is the fixed point amid disorder, the center that balances chaos. Whoever masters it becomes a reference of stability and strength, even without trying. In social confrontations, those who talk too much seek emotional control. Those who stay quiet possess it. Silence reorganizes the invisible hierarchy among men. It defines who is the target and who is the observer. The one who defends himself shrinks. The one who observes grows. It is an unwritten law of power. The first to justify himself loses authority. Silence, therefore, is more than the absence of sound. It is a tactical presence, a magnetic field that bends the minds of the impulsive. It does not assert itself through violence, but through gravity. The world listens most intently to what is said in silence. Most men surrender not because of physical weakness, but because of their need to react. The impulse to respond, to explain, to prove oneself right is the most predictable mechanism of the ordinary man. He believes he is defending himself, but in truth he is only revealing his vulnerability. The immediate reaction is a confession of lost control. The reactive man believes strength is speed, when in reality, strength is pause. He doesn't understand that whoever reacts first has already lost control of time. The one who dictates the rhythm of the conversation, the emotion, or the action governs the field. The reactive man lives under another's rhythm, led, manipulated, and eventually emptied. Machiavelli would say this man does not even rule his own mind. Reaction is the surrender of psychological territory. When you respond in the heat of provocation, you open the gates of your emotional fortress and allow the enemy to see what moves you. Anger, pride, fear, all become visible. And what is visible can be controlled. That is why silence is superior. It keeps the walls intact. No opponent can attack what he cannot see. The modern man's mistake is to confuse expression with power. He believes that speaking is asserting himself, when in fact it is exposing himself. The rush to justify, explain, or respond turns dialogue into a trap. The wise man does not try to convince, he observes. He understands that the need to prove something is the reflection of insecurity in one who has not yet mastered himself. In every interaction, the reactive man wastes time trying to balance his ego. He responds to be understood, not to dominate. This impulse is predictable, and everything predictable is weak. Power lies in unpredictability. Silence creates that gray zone where no one knows what you think, and precisely for that reason, they respect you. Reactivity is the opposite of strategy. The strategist understands that every provocation is an attempt at control, and the one who controls does not need to justify himself. Silence is the gesture that separates the rational from the impulsive, the sovereign from the servant. The man who can witness provocation without being disturbed has already won the battle before taking action. Those who live reacting end up ruled by the emotions of others. They are governed by glances, words, and small offenses. They become puppets of any stimulus. Silence, on the other hand, restores sovereignty. It turns insult into distant noise and the offender into a frustrated spectator. The absence of response is the most elegant form of humiliation. Machiavelli wrote that a wise prince should never move out of anger, but out of calculation. The reactive man acts out of emotion. The strategist acts out of opportunity. One wastes energy, the other accumulates power. When you resist the impulse to react, you stop being part of the game and become the one who directs it. Silence is the shield of the strong and the sentence of the impulsive, because every man who needs to respond to prove his strength has already lost it the moment he opened his mouth. The pause is the boundary between instinct and mastery. When a man learns to pause before acting, he separates himself from the masses who merely react. The pause is the interval where the mind reorganizes itself, the space where emotion is converted into calculation. It is in this silent space that true superiority is born, the power to choose while others can only respond. Machiavelli understood that time is the most expensive currency of power. Those who rush spend it, those who wait accumulate it. Silence, when used as a pause, is the purest form of time control. It suspends the flow of events, forces others to reveal themselves, and allows you to observe without being observed. The pause is the invisible command of rhythm, and whoever controls rhythm controls outcome. Observation is the second pillar of this power. To observe is to hear what is not said, to notice hesitation in gestures, contradiction in the eyes, fear in the breath. The man who observes more than he speaks begins to see the hidden threads that move human intentions. He does not react to what is shown. He reacts to what is concealed. This makes him a reader of the game, not a piece within it. The pause has a devastating psychological effect on others. When you don't respond immediately, your interlocutor feels the weight of his own voice. He begins to question what he said, fears he revealed too much, and tries to fill the silence with justifications. The pause creates discomfort, and discomfort is the cradle of submission. Few can endure the silence between words. Those who master it become lords of tension. The pause is also the most elegant form of social power. It conveys control without effort. The man who is in no hurry to speak demonstrates self-sufficiency. He does not compete for attention because he knows his presence already demands it. The silence between his words is worth more than the speech of the impatient. It is the difference between the one who seeks to be heard and the one who is already observed. Observation, however, is not just looking, it is interpreting with cold precision. The observer does not get involved, he gathers information. He perceives patterns, identifies weaknesses, recognizes repetitions. The man who observes in silence ceases to be vulnerable because he understands the enemy before the enemy understands him. Observation is a form of anticipation, the privilege of those who are not distracted by emotion. In verbal confrontations, the pause is an invisible strike. It breaks the opponent's rhythm, forces him to recalculate, and traps him in his own anxiety. Silence interrupts his impulse to dominate the dialogue. It shifts the axis of the conversation and places it under your control. Power does not lie in winning the argument, but in deciding when it ends. The pause, therefore, is the strategist's breath. Observation is his gaze. Together, they transform the common man into a commanding presence. Because while the world drowns in haste, the man who masters time and silence rules without needing to move. Silence is more than an attitude, it is a mark of position. In any hierarchy, those who speak the least are the ones who decide. The absence of words is the language of those who no longer need to compete for attention. The silent man does not try to convince, he simply exists. And that restrained existence is interpreted as power, because mastering one's own sound means overcoming the need to be seen. In circles of authority, silence is synonymous with control. Leaders, chiefs, and influential men speak only when it is unavoidable. Each word carries weight because it is rare. What is scarce becomes valuable. Thus, silence turns speech into a currency of prestige. Those who speak too much, on the other hand, devalue their own discourse. Their words lose force because they cannot wait for the right moment to use them. Social psychology shows that silence creates a perception of superiority. People interpret the absence of speech as a sign of confidence. The man who remains silent under pressure seems to have access to information or intentions others do not. His calm is mistaken for wisdom, but in truth, it is emotional control, and that control is the core of status, the power to remain composed while everything else collapses. Machiavelli viewed power as a theater of perception. He understood that authority is, above all, an illusion sustained by control and appearance. Silence is the curtain that keeps that illusion intact. The prince who speaks little preserves his mystery, and mystery is the fuel of respect. The less people know about you, the more they fill the void with favorable assumptions. In social contexts, silence acts as a filter. It separates the impulsive from the observant, the needy from the self-sufficient. The silent man is feared because he seems to need nothing, neither approval nor response. That independence creates magnetism. It follows the same principle of discrete power. The less you reveal, the more you are noticed. Status is not noise, it is contrast. The man who masters silence creates an aura of presence that distinguishes him effortlessly. He is remembered not for what he says, but for the calm he imposes. His lack of speech becomes a form of invisible hierarchy, authority that is not announced but felt, and the more he restrains himself, the heavier his presence becomes. In an age of constant exposure, silence is a luxury. It is the privilege of those who need neither justification nor promotion. The man who speaks only when he chooses to, not when he must, demonstrates mastery over himself and over time. That control is perceived by others as status, even when he does nothing to display it. The true symbol of authority is not the volume of the voice, but the mastery of silence. For while ordinary men struggle to be heard, the man of status is the one whose silence alone makes the world listen. The modern man speaks too much and is heard too little. He lives trying to be understood in a world that no longer respects those who explain themselves. His presence has been diluted by excess expression and the constant need for validation. The result is emptiness. The more he tries to be seen, the less he is noticed. Rebuilding masculine presence begins with renunciation, remaining silent in order to exist again. Presence is not noise, it is density. It is the sum of posture, gaze, and silence. The man who enters a room and commands the air without words has achieved something rare: perceptible control. Machiavelli knew that power is always a matter of perception. It does not matter who you are. What matters is what others feel when you are there. And silence shapes that feeling with almost instinctive precision. The first step in rebuilding this presence is control of expression. A man must speak with intention, not impulse. A steady voice, slow rhythm, deliberate pauses. Every word should sound deliberate, even when simple. This restraint is not artificial. It is proof of internal mastery. The man who speaks slowly shows that he thinks quickly. The man who speaks little shows that he chooses. The second reconstruction is physical. The man who moves calmly demonstrates control. Upright posture, steady gaze, minimal gestures. The body communicates more than any speech. It reveals whether you are comfortable with yourself or still trying to be accepted. Masculine presence is not imposed through force, but through stability. A steady body is the extension of silence. The third reconstruction is mental. A man must abandon the desire to be understood. The need for comprehension makes him dependent. When you accept being misunderstood and remain calm nonetheless, you reach the highest level of self-control. Respect is not born from what you explain, but from what you endure in silence. Masculine presence is, above all, a matter of contained energy. It is the decision not to react, not to compete for approval, not to lose yourself in other people's emotions. This stillness is not weakness, it is gravity. People are drawn to those who carry inner weight, not to those who disperse attention. Silence is what makes that weight perceptible. Machiavelli would say that a man should appear constant even when he is at war within himself. Serenity is the disguise of strategy. The one who maintains it confuses observers, dominates the environment, and preserves respect. The reconstruction of presence is therefore the reconstruction of hierarchy, first within, then in the world. When a man relearns to inhabit his own silence, he stops competing for space. The environment begins to respond to him. It is at that moment that presence returns to existence, not as appearance, but as fact, because true power does not lie in being noticed, but in being inevitable. At the end, everything returns to silence. Wars, words, intentions, all dissolve in the stillness of the one who no longer needs to prove anything. Silence is the language of those who have understood the game, and understanding is the highest stage of mastery. The man who rules in silence is not the one who imposes, but the one who observes. He moves the world without touching it, because he has learned to control what truly matters, himself. Machiavelli said that a ruler should be feared in a way that fear does not turn into hatred. Silence fulfills this function perfectly. It creates respect without violence, distance without arrogance. The man who stays quiet in the face of provocation shows power over his own ego, and a controlled ego is the safest throne a man can sit upon. Silence governs because it disarms. No one truly knows what you think, feel, or intend. That uncertainty is the force field of authority. Others adjust to your presence, measure their words, and restrain their actions. Not because you compel them, but because you make them realize something few ever do. The one who controls his own sound controls the space of everyone around him. The man who speaks to be understood still seeks validation. The one who stays silent has already found inner understanding. He does not need acceptance, only immovability. That serenity is the mark of power. It turns chaos into scenery and the enemy into a background figure. Silence is the territory where nothing can strike you, because nothing can make you react. Silence is also judgment. It exposes the character of others without you needing to evaluate them. In your calm, the vain grow restless, the weak justify themselves, and the insecure try to please. You do not need to test them. Silence does it for you. It reveals who can withstand the absence of approval and who collapses without applause. There is nobility in not needing to explain anything. It is the moment when a man stops reacting and becomes the axis. When words grow scarce, the gaze takes command. When answers become rare, presence becomes law. In that state, silence ceases to be absence and becomes pure authority, the kind of power that doesn't need to be declared to be felt. Machiavelli would have understood this clearly. The one who masters silence rules the game without having to play it. The man who speaks controls moments. The one who stays silent controls destinies. Speech creates impact. Silence creates hierarchy. In the end, the world divides between those who beg to be heard and those who, in silence, are impossible to ignore.